the Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast with your host, Jackie Pilosoff.
No one should have to go through a divorce feeling alone and isolated. The Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast is a production of Divorced Girl Smiling, where every show is 30 minutes aimed to empower you, help you feel validated and understood, and connect you with some of the best divorce professionals in the industry. So grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and start smiling as you join us right now for the Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found and always at divorcedgirlsmiling.com. If you're suffering from addiction, or your spouse or another family member is, traditional recovery programs will tell you a few things. You're powerless over the addict, he or she must go into a program to recover, or he or she needs to hit rock bottom before they decide to get help. Well, Amber Hollingsworth disagrees. Amber spent several years running an intensive outpatient program for addiction, and she decided to think outside the box and create a method she felt was, frankly, more effective. Amber is the founder of Hope for Families Recovery Center, a company that offers online courses, a new kind of intervention method, private coaching, and group coaching memberships for both those suffering from addiction and their families. Whether you're trying to save your marriage or you're going through a divorce, Hope for Families is a way for you and your family to begin healing. If you want to learn more about Hope for Families, you can find them at familyrecoveryacademy.online. You can also find them in the Trusted Professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling. I also want to tell you about a wonderful law firm in Chicago and Bannockburn. The name of the firm is Katz and Stefani, and they do high asset, complex litigation and mediation cases. I have known co-founder Dan Stefani for over 20 years. I know all the lawyers in the firm. They all have different niches, and I really, really love the firm. They're extremely well respected, and I trust them. If you want to learn more, go to katzstefani.com. You can also find them in the Trusted Professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling. It took Megan Kerrigan a mere 48 hours to drop her married name from her Facebook page after her cheating husband at the Coldplay concert, Andy Byron, was caught. When I saw that, I thought, well, who can blame her? She was probably devastated, humiliated, and in a lot of pain, especially because they're public figures, not to mention she found out her husband was cheating at the same time as the rest of the world. I'm sure she has so much trauma. And what I want to talk about today is the fact that, first of all, my message to Kerrigan, as I wrote in an article for Divorce Girl Smiling, is you will survive this for sure. I gave her all kinds of advice about how wonderful her life's going to be. I know it's going to be a really hard road, but I know she's going to have a great, great life ahead of her. But specifically, what I want to talk about is that she's about to go through a divorce, and she and her husband are going to have to figure out if they're going to litigate, if they're going to try to mediate this, how they're going to go about getting divorced. I have a great guest on here who is a divorce mediator, and he and I are going to talk about mediating when somebody cheats. And my guest has so much experience with this. It's going to be a great conversation. I want to introduce Brian James, who is a divorce mediator and parenting coordinator. Brian is the founder of his company, CEL and Associates, and he's been doing this since 2005. He's actually had countless mediations with couples who have endured cheating. Hi, Brian.
Hello.
Thank you so much for doing this. I'm so looking forward to hearing your advice and your thoughts. Am I correct in saying that you have had countless mediations with cheated couples who had cheating?
Yes, over the years, I've had many cheaters, both husbands and wives.
Okay. Tell me how, when a couple walks in to mediation and there's been cheating, how is that different from a couple who is getting divorced not because of cheating?
It many times it automatically ratchets up the emotions. For me as a mediator, I want to stick with the business side of things. Divorce as a business. There's certain things they have to agree to, unemotional, keep it business-like, keep it moving forward. When you have an affair, it's a lot different because the emotions take center stage. People negotiate and make statements, swear based on their level of hurt because there are different levels of cheating. A one-time affair, a long-standing affair, multiple affairs, someone gets pregnant. So depending on how much, it's weird to say like this, how much of an affair there is and how each person reacts to that really affects the mediation process.
Or if the person's cheated and now leaving for the affair partner and they're
Right.
about to get remarried and according to the other spouse live happily ever after, so they think.
And when
And
they want and when they want that new significant other to automatically be part of their kids' lives, that's a whole nother level of difficulty.
absolutely. Okay, before we get into my other questions about cheating and mediation for cheating couples, I want to just go over some things that if you've been cheated on, you might be experiencing. Now, I want to tell my listeners Brian is a happily married guy. He's never been divorced. He has never been cheated on that he knows of. Um, but you have had so many clients in mediation, so you understand what the people cheating are feeling. I haven't been cheated on by my ex-husband, but I was cheated on in a relationship, a long-term relationship, so I have firsthand experience with this, and it was awful. So, Brian, I'm gonna say, like, some of the things I think people who find out they've been cheated on are feeling, and then you can feel free to, like, tell me if you've seen this in mediation and how it plays out. So, the first instinct is, how could I have been so naive and stupid? How did I not know about this? How did I miss the signs? And what I tell people is, you miss the signs because you're a good person and it didn't even occur to you that there might be cheating. So it's not your fault. Not that I'm saying everybody's perfect, but the cheating is not your fault. And you have no reason to feel stupid or naive. What do you think?
Agree, because you're not looking for it. If something seems off, you're just like, ah, just whatever. They probably were working late or this charge makes sense. I trust them. I trust my spouse. So you're not even thinking about them cheating on you. That's why so many people get blindsided when it comes out because they really didn't know.
They didn't know, and then what they realized later is, now I understand why, and it kinda all comes back, and they go, "Oh, I shoulda seen it." But I truly believe that we self-protect so much that we don't see a lot of things because A,
Sure.
we love the person, and B, we just like Brian said, we trust. You just trust if you're in a marriage and you made that commitment, you trust. So no reason to feel stupid, naive, like you shoulda known at all.
No.
Another emotion, humiliation. What is everybody gonna think? They might think I wasn't a good wife. Maybe I'm not attractive. Maybe, people are gonna think like, "Oh, look at the new girlfriend. She's so much prettier than me." Do you ever hear that?
Yeah, I do. And my when people bring stuff up like that, I'm like, then the person who's cheating should have left their spouse before they cheating. If that's coming, if they come out and say these are the reasons why I cheated on you, which there's no excuse for it, then they should have left the person beforehand, before they started cheating. Because there's a big difference between getting divorced because you're cheating or falling out of love with your spouse because of whatever reasons, and then getting into a relationship. It makes all the difference in the emotional part of this process.
I also wanna add, for people listening who've been cheated on, some of the most beautiful, perfect-bodied women have been cheated on. It is not that you're have a muffin top. It's not that you're over 40. It's not that you're not as attractive. Cheating, in my opinion, has absolutely nothing to do with that. You were as good of a wife or husband as you thought you could be. You did your best. You're taking care of yourself the best you know how. The cheating is about the other person's needs to have something different, feel wanted, not be bored anymore, escape, feel like the grass might be greener somewhere else. And see, there's a theme for all these reasons. They they it's about them. It's not about you.
Yeah, yeah. You marriages, you take the good and the bad. You take your spouse for who they are. Now, if they do a complete 180 from who they were, that's one thing. But we are who we are. You can't expect them to automatically change because you want them to change because you're looking for something else. That's not on them. Either you love the person, want to be with them for who they are, or you don't. Going to look for it somewhere else should be done after you're divorced. That's the sad part. People get divorced. They fall out of love, but they don't have to cheat during the marriage.
And if they do, it's not your fault that they
Yeah.
cheated.
Yeah.
Okay, next one is anger. So I know that when I found out about the cheating of my boyfriend, I wanted to punch him. I wanted to scream, "How could you do this?" I wanted to I was pissed. And it's an incredibly frustrating, disappointing feeling where you're so angry that you like want to cry and scream. And do you see that in mediation?
Yeah. Yeah. And I can understand the anger, but to a point. To the point where it starts to negatively affect the process. That's where sometimes we have to put mediation on hold for that person to work with a therapist, possibly to work on that anger there versus here, because that anger gets in the way of the goal of mediation, which is to come to agreements.
That is what we're going to get into after the break. We are going to take a short break. You're listening to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. I'm here with divorce mediator Brian James of CEL and Associates. If you want to learn more, go to celandassociates.com. And Brian and I are talking about going to mediation if you are in a divorce where there was cheating involved. So we'll be right back, and then we're going to talk about what it looks like in mediation and give you some tips. We'll be right back. Where am I going to live? Will I be able to send my kids to college? Will I be alone forever? Do I have to go back to work? Who am I now? These are the kinds of questions newly separated people ask. I would know, and so would Lisa Lisser, a divorced mom and an attorney turned divorce coach. Lisa is the founder of her company, LZL Coaching, and she spent the past few years helping people going through a divorce or before a divorce or after a divorce focus on their core issues, develop an action plan, prioritize the kids, and rediscover their best selves. I love Lisa. I really trust her. I think she's a wonderful coach. If you want to learn more, you can find her at lzlcoaching.com. I also want to tell you about a wonderful mediator named Mara Linder. And Mara is an attorney and the founder and CEO of her practice, Modern Mediation, out of Arizona. Mara has been an active, licensed Arizona attorney for over 33 years, and she chose to step away from traditional litigation after witnessing couples and families struggle with exorbitant financial, emotional, and personal costs of court battles with two attorneys. So she started a mediation practice, and for the past 18 years, she's been doing that. People think if a couple has a lot of assets and if the finances are complex, that litigation is a necessity, and that's just not true. Mara is wonderful for high complex divorce cases. If you want to learn more, You can find her at modernmediationaz.com. And you can find both Mara and Lisa in the Trusted Professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling. Welcome back to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. And today we are talking about mediation when a couple is getting divorced because there was cheating. We're doing this in the wake of the Kerrigan and Andy Byron Kiss Cam Coldplay concert cheating thing. Okay. So, Brian, when people walk into mediation, first of all, I bet you there's people out there that would say it's not possible to mediate because there's too much emotion involved in cheating. But tell me why, because I think you're going to agree with me that I think it's even a bigger reason to mediate. What do you think?
Yeah, because emotions are not good for mediation because mediation is about reaching agreements. Emotions, especially negative ones, are great when people litigate because they're willing to spend thousands and thousands of dollars of their money to try to get a pound of flesh because they feel that's going to make them happy. They're willing to spend $50,000 to get back five and think they're going to get some peace out of that. Where I have to say, no, keep the $50,000 and split it, and you each get 25. Don't, it's, and this is easy for me to say. I have to help them to not let the anger and sadness and just overall feelings affect what they're doing.
Okay, I love this. Now, don't you feel like people who have been cheated on are so upset, rightfully so, but they say, I am going to take him for everything he's worth. And that's where that comes from. They want to tell the judge he cheated. But I can only speak for Illinois, and I also shouldn't even be speaking because I'm not a divorce attorney. So this is not legal advice. But in Illinois, it's equitable distribution. You're not going to get any more money if your spouse cheated unless he spent money on the relationship. You can get that back. But it's not going to matter, and the judge isn't going to want to hear what you have to say. If you go into mediation with Brian and Ellen Feldman, who is his business partner, and they mediate together, if you go into their session, you're going to get to say a lot more than you would in court, right, Brian? You're going to get like 1 minute in court, 60 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever.
You're going to be able to express your feelings in mediation in a confidential setting versus it being aired in public for everyone to hear, like the Coldplay thing. You know, most people, whether they're cheated on or they're the cheaters, most of the cheaters don't want it out in the public. Well, court and litigation is public. Anybody can drive to a courthouse and sit in and listen. Where if the person is able to, during mediation, get what they want to say out to a point, so their spouse knows how they're feeling, that's really important. That's really
That is
important.
extremely important. And in the case of the Kerrigan Andy Byron divorce, I bet you they end up mediating because they're such a high profile couple that if they do go to court to get divorced, every reporter is going to be there. So, I mean, why not have it in private? Nobody knows. And you do get to tell your story, like Brian said, to a point and, and get it out how you feel.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. What about, is it harder in mediation for people to agree on certain things if there's been cheating?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes people have been cheated on, believe that their spouse should give them everything because they've been cheated on, even if that is not in the best interest of their kids, even if that doesn't make sense from a financial standpoint, because they feel that they're deserved that because they're cheated on. Even though, if you look at it just strictly from a business standpoint, they're not. but they're looking for something. They're looking to get something that's going to make them feel better, to make them think that they feel better. But many times in the long run, that's not going to make them feel better.
Tell me if I'm right on this. If Megan Kerrigan was my friend, I would say to her, go to mediation and try to settle quickly. And the reason I say that is I have this theory that people getting divorced, especially one who cheats, at the beginning feels so guilty that they'll give them so much more than they would if you let time go by and they start to think about it and they get frustrated and they're paying temporary child support and they're feeling like, oh, this is bullshit. Shouldn't have to do this. And they start to get resentment and they forget what they did as the months go on. And then, the relationship might get worse. So now they don't even like their ex wife and they don't feel as guilty. So I kind of think that you should settle quickly. And I know somebody who did this and she got the best outcome because her husband felt so guilty. He gave her a ton at the beginning.
Yep, I have people that the cheaters will give more out of guilt financially. My job as a mediator is to make sure that they understand what they're doing. Of course, their spouse is happy because they're maybe getting 70% of the assets. But me as the mediator, I got to make sure that that doesn't cripple them financially. Because ultimately, especially if they have children, I want them to try to be able to be good co parents for their children. And if someone out of guilt gives everything away and they're living in a 1-bedroom apartment and they have 4 kids, well, that's going to be difficult for them to be able to see their kids. So sometimes I get one person mad at me because I'm just trying to explain, hey, that's not really equitable because of this. Do you understand what you're agreeing to? So trying to get it back to that mindset of, okay, this is a business. I need to make sure that I'm doing this because this is the long haul. So just kind of as a mediator, you got to weigh both of those things.
Okay, but also for people who are newly separated and don't know the process yet, after you agree and come to agreements in mediation, you go back and show your lawyers the agreement. And if what Brian's saying happens, even if Brian didn't advise you to change it and this is not equitable and this isn't good, either a lawyer and or the judge are not going to sign off on it. So then you're going to end up back at the mediation table because either so when you go through mediation, you show the agreement to your lawyer. Your lawyer might say, I don't think you should sign this. I don't think this is fair. I don't think that happens often with CEL and Associates because they've been doing it for so long. And like Brian said, it's not gonna like how many people have ever gone back to lawyers and they say, don't sign this?
So when like for a financial agreement, when it gets so skewed one way over roughly around 50-50, of course, the person's attorney who is giving up more is always going to say something to them. But but it is still the client's decision. If they understand what equitable means and they're willing voluntarily to give more and it doesn't cripple them financially, where they're living like down by the river in a box, then most likely a judge is going to say yes to it. Their attorney may not like it, but that's not my problem. I work for my clients. We work for our clients. So if they're coming to a rational resolution and understand what they're doing, then good for them. That gives them peace of mind and makes them feel good. Do it.
And then also another layer is a judge could say, I'm not signing off on this, go back to mediation. So if you are listening to this and you're thinking, I don't know if I want to do mediation because then I won't really know if it's fair. Yes, you will, because you have 2 other layers that are going to tell you if they think it's fair. Now, Brian brought up a good point. You might have a lawyer who's very litigious and thinks, oh, I can do better for her. And we don't want that either, because doing better might mean just more money and time on lawyers. And you might end up with a little more money, but then you spend it in lawyer fees. So, you got to, if you go through mediation, you have to trust your mediators. And I do want to endorse Brian and Ellen and say I would really, really, really trust them because they've been doing it for a long time. They know the laws and they will give you a divorce agreement that is fair.
Because we do tell our clients that if your agreement is so egregious that in our professional opinions, a judge is going to say no to it, we don't want to put our names on that. I don't want attorneys and judges thinking that we're idiots and don't know what we're doing. And we fired people before because of that,
Mhm.
because one person is just getting railed during the process and they're not advocating. And I'm not putting my name on an agreement like this. And when people start talking about, well, my attorney said I could get better if I went to court. Well, did your attorney also say that you could get worse if you went to court? So I kind of play both sides
And
because
it depends on the attorney too.
exactly, exactly. I can look at every mediation agreement and talk about where they could get better, but I'm also going to talk about where they could get worse. How much money it's going to cost them, how much time it's going to take, what's it going to do to their co-parenting relationship if they do that, to try to sway them away from trying to go for more because someone is in there. It could be an attorney. It could be a friend. It could be a coworker. It could be something they read online. You have to decide who you trust during this process to do right by both of you.
And if you're listening to this, beware of the person who says, "Don't take that deal. I know this girl who got this, this, and this."
Yeah.
That every divorce is different. You don't know the whole story. You're only seeing one piece.
Yeah. You have to look
Okay,
at your situation in a bubble and not
absolutely.
anybody else's. Yeah.
Okay. Last word, because we're kind of running out of time. I want to ask you two questions, Brian. Any advice for the person who's been cheated on in mediation, and then advice for the cheater?
Try not to let that drive the process in mediation. Also, when someone gets cheated on and that trust is wrecked, they start to believe that they can't trust their spouse with anything. Now, all of a sudden, are they hiding money? Can I leave them alone with our kids? So, yes, the person cheated on you, and that's horrible. But you also have to look at what was the person like beforehand. Were they honest with finances? Are they a good parent? Don't let that affect everything. And that's easy for me to sit here and say. I know that, but it's true. And then for the person that's been the cheater, suck it up, admit what you did. Don't try to make excuses. Don't try to rationalize it. You've hurt somebody. You've done that. You made that choice. You now have to live with that choice. I'm not sitting there saying you need to give that other person everything out of guilt, but there's times when the emotions take over and you may have to agree to something a little less in your favor because of what you did. That's reality. That's trying to get people through this process as peacefully as possible without spending $100,000.
Brian, thank you so much. What a great conversation. Really appreciate your time being on the show.
Thank you.
In closing, I feel like I should just say this message to Megan Kerrigan. So I looked online, kind of looked at her, kind of learned a bit about her online. I want to say this takes a lot of strength, a lot of courage, a lot of patience, and there's going to be many bumps along the road, but you will get there. I am sure of it. I also believe we will read some news story a couple years down the road that she's in love again, this time with somebody who isn't a cheater. And how do I know this? Because I get so many emails from women who are at rock bottom And then they email me 6 months later, say they're doing great. They email me a year later, they tell me they're in love. They email me a year and a half later and tell me they're getting married. So that's how I know. I've been doing this since 2013. So we want to wish Megan Kerrigan all the best. And I want to wish anybody who's been cheated on, I want you to be inspired by this and know that you're going to be okay. If you want to learn more or hire Brian and Ellen, you can find them at celandassociates.com. And you can also find them in the trusted professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling, which is divorcedgirlsmiling.com. You can also go to my website to read articles, listen to more podcasts, or sign up for my free consult where I will listen to your situation, totally confidential, 30 minutes, tell me what's going on, and I'll make really good recommendations to professionals that I think can help you. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you real soon.